Sorry we cannot be there in person. I mean, myself, I'm calling in from Phnom Penh, Cambodia right now, while Omer is sitting in Helsinki. So what we have on the agenda today is telling a story. It will be a certain technical part to it, but mainly we want to share the story of ZADA, how we went live and how we've been expanding, building up real production cases in Southeast Asia, and especially in Myanmar. So as a company, ZADA calls itself an identity company working with an identity network and an ecosystem. So the goal for us is to revolutionize how people interact with the world around them, especially in a place like Myanmar. So the people here today is me, of course, Andreas Sigurdsson. I'm Swedish, but been based in Asia for the last 20 years. My dear Omer, based in Helsinki instead, with a blockchain architect experience. So we kind of switched place. I went to Asia and he went to the Nordics. As a company, we really believe, like all of you, of course, that everyone should have access to an identity and be able to prove who they are and get access to services. And in Europe, of course, this is a little bit taken for granted. But in many places in Southeast Asia, it's not something everyone can do. And not everyone have access to services because they cannot prove who they are. So we took the name of ZADA from this wooden thing that the person in Myanmar gets when you're born. This is traditional ZADA that states exactly who you are and what time you're born and everything. And you can use it for fortune telling, especially. And we decided to focus on Myanmar because I've been here for the last 11 years and there's a big population of 55 million people, a large share of young people, but only less than half has an official ID. And if you can even call it official because you can barely trust it. And only a small share, about 25%, have access to, in fact, traditional banking and microfinancing services. So what happened in Myanmar is that when I came, it was abundance of money. There was money everywhere. People were counting it, they were carrying it in bags. You had to have a plastic bag or a suitcase to carry your money. But now instead there's QR codes everywhere. And now we're talking about 5 years. In fact, I think even in the last 3 years, there are QR codes instead everywhere. And you have to have multiple wallets and multiple bank accounts. You can still not transfer money between the banks, but you can use many different QR codes. But the thing is that the country is still lagging behind when it comes to normal trust. So fraud is very common. People don't trust documents. The national ID you can print yourself at home. Telecom companies say that 70% of their IDs for their phone numbers are fake. So there's a very low trust, making it very hard to believe anything you receive in Myanmar. So being Swedish, of course, I thought this is a perfect case. Bank ID, let's do it. So 2018, we started to look at it. And we worked with so many different technologies from Europe. But the reality was that not even the banks have good KYC in a place like Myanmar. So there's no one having good KYC, or good information about who a person is. So a technology that was kind of based on the fact that someone knows who you are, didn't really work. So instead what happened was that me and Omer had a discussion and we were bouncing ideas and we realized that this with the SSI seems to have some interesting opportunities. So we took the pill and went straight into figuring out how we can do this for Southeast Asia, and especially a place like Myanmar where there's very bad identity systems. And we realized that, yes, we need to be able to help people. We need to be able to help people prove who they are anywhere, anytime, so they can, in fact, apply for loans from any part of the country or sign up for university. And the timing was interesting because the timing was just in the COVID. So it was the spring of 2021 where everyone's working on the passports. And we saw that the first case we could do was to help people prove that they were vaccinated because the government didn't have anything themselves. So in a few months, we created first app for a demo. We used, I think this was the Trinsic wallet for the first pilot. And we showcased this is how it can be done. And it went quick. So from January to March, I think it was, May, we did a pilot. We signed the first hospital and then we went live a little bit later. And we decided to go with the basic stack. We went with Hyperledger Indu, Aries, and Sovereign. And we developed our own app with 3 months over the summer. We managed the whole SSI flow. We made it open source. And what we faced was that, great, now we have a functioning solution, but how will anyone issue credentials? So it sounded very good. And then So we had to go back to the hospital and we had to help them to first register patients. So get people to get the vaccination and then manage the vaccinations. And then in the end, issue the credential. So from doing the first mobile app and the network, we had to build all the supporting softwares and apps to help the hospital, in fact, using ZADA to issue a credential. And we went live. So about 8 months from me and Omer decided to push the button, we went live in Myanmar. And we went live in three different cities, 4 different vaccination centers. And we were on the ground supporting people to install the app. And I think this was the key. And we've been, for 2 years, we are still visible on site, supporting hospitals and clinics all over the country and learning every day how it works. Because some of the interesting things that we learned when we went live was, in fact, that people don't use emails. And that was a funny thing for Omer, that after 1 week and 10,000 wallets created, we realized that our team was creating the email addresses for people in order to get the COVID pass. So Omer and the team went down in the basement, and for another 3 weeks, they removed the email dependency. And so the timeline went aggressive. So in about 6 months, we had the contract. Another 3 months later, we went live, 20,000 wallets by September. October, we did the first verifier contract. November, we built another few softwares to support. And by December, we got both Singapore and Thailand as governments to accept ZADA. And I wanted to just emphasize a little bit on this one, because this is something that was quite unique. Because we as a private company working with private hospitals managed to get both Singapore and Thailand government to, in fact, recognize ZADA. And as you can see there, in Myanmar, there was no government credential. So there was no certification for anyone from Myanmar to bring to Singapore or Thailand. But ZADA was the only one. And people could travel across the border and just shows their ZADA wallet and the QR code, and they were welcome in. So in 12 months, we managed to exchange about 100,000 credentials. We opened up about 70,000 wallets. But the funniest thing was that we did not spend a day on updating our core infrastructure. So that was because the technology worked. What especially Omer had been leading was a very good technology stack. Everything worked. Issuance, verification, the wallet, it did what it should. But what we faced instead was the user experience. And that's where the tough part was, because SSI, SSL, when we made it the formal way of the connection creation acceptance, it was so far away what people expected. So that's where we struggled the most, and that's where we spent all our time, in fact, was to figure out how can we make adoption easier? How can we make people have less pain to do this? So apart from the core, the ZADA network, the wallet that we made open source, we spent a year to just build different solutions to make people be able to issue and verify credentials online, to make flows of collecting credentials, to log in using credentials, to verify credentials. If you don't have an API access, you can do it online. And then we even had to build the booking apps and registration apps to get hospitals to issue credentials. Otherwise, they have no systems to connect with the API. So that's where we spend, in fact, most of our time was really to figuring out how to make it easy, how to make people want to use ZADA. And 2 years in now, it's been exciting, and we learned a lot of lessons. We learned that, especially in places like Southeast Asia, companies don't really want to change the processes unless they get instructions to do so from the Ministry of Health or from the Ministry of Telecommunication or Central Bank. There's a friction, especially in IT departments. There are always a lot of worries about data security. How does it work? Why is it different? Why is it not good enough what they already have? They have a QR code. That should be enough. And few don't really care about the technology, honestly. We talk about SSI and decentralization, but they just want it to work. They just want to have the paper to show. And especially in Southeast Asia, I mean, GDPR is great in Europe. In Southeast Asia, it's on the extremes. Either they send you the whole database in Excel sheet of 10,000 customers and employees, or they are super scared about letting anyone even touch the data because they think you just want to steal it. But what people do care about, that we learned, is they want to save money or they want to make money. So as long as we can figure out a way to show that ZADA or identity solves a problem that helps them to either save or make money, you get in there. But the other one is that people are something such new as SSI is hard because someone making a decision has to take a risk. And this old saying that you never get fired for buying an IBM is a bit the same thing. It's much easier to keep using an old solution instead of taking the risk of implementing something new. And in many cases, what we're doing here is not evolution, it's real innovation, taking things to a completely different level. So in Myanmar, for example, they're already decentralized in the health sector because they use books. You bring your book to the nurse fill it in and give it back to you, and you bring it to the next doctor. So what we did is paperless. We provide the systems to the clinics, the hospitals, and they provide everything from different vaccination records, lab test results, medical bills, everything completely in the ZADA wallet. No papers involved. And this is live. We work with proof of employments. We work with beneficiary IDs, also a very exciting thing, because when you have migrants, the family is usually exposed and cannot prove who they are. Or that they have access to the same benefits as their husbands or wives. Or seafarers, same thing. Seafarers need to prove who they are when they're outside the border. How can you create trust in a document? And then they bring this out of wallet. This we went live with, in fact, last Wednesday. Academic qualifications coming up, 54 universities. We're cutting the time from 3 months to get your degree to about, I think, 3 seconds, plus minus. And this is a game changer for students and people who need to prove their degrees to get visas and so on. Medical referrals, another very exciting case we managed to launch was to help clinics and hospitals share information between each other also because they get the kickbacks when they're referring patients. So all this moves really nicely and fast. And we have a lot of new projects, a lot of things coming up. We see the business cases, we start having a lot of traction now after 2 years on the market. But then came the other parts of it, the other side. So from pushing usability and different cases, we face some tech challenges. And I think this is where this immediately landed on Omer's desk.
Thank you very much, Andres. It has been an amazing journey taking ZADA where it is right now, starting from the MVP we built like a couple of years ago, and then now having this fully production-grade solution serving thousands of people. And it's amazing to see how it helped people. And it's just a couple of days ago we saw this one note from a customer who was stuck in another country and had to prove her COVID pass for traveling, and she was so relieved because the government system wasn't working, and they also accepted ZADA credentials, and she was able to get the ZADA credential instantly via one of our applications online just by putting her social security number online and proving that who she is, and moving forward. Well, particularly talking about continuing the journey of what just Andres said, we built this system, but now we have reached a place where we are starting to question some things, that how scalable is it right now? I mean, it's good if you are doing a couple of thousands of credentials or even 100,000 credentials, but what's going to happen when you hit 1 million credentials, or what's going to happen when you're going to have a traffic of issuance of let's say thousands of credentials per minute or 100,000 of credentials per minute? And that's what we're going to look at hopefully in near future when we do those educational credentials. For example, publishing the result for intermediate for 12th grade in Myanmar. That's like 100,000, more than 100,000 students who need their test reports or result cards or whatnot. Now, the challenges that we faced are not new. I guess everybody in the SSI industry probably are facing them, but I thought it would be nice to talk about them. A couple of them which affected us directly recently were, which affected our speed to develop and execute things, which was that the sovereign staging net went from free to paid, which meant actually they closed the staging net and they renamed it the builder net to the test net, and we had to move everything upside down to make sure that our test environments and everything just doesn't stop working. Then on the other side, we had Indicio, and we thought, okay, we could just move to the Indicio net, and it's good. And we did slowly migrate to Indicio testnet for our development purposes, and we just heard the news that they were resetting their ledgers, which means all the schemas and credential definitions and everything we had in the test environment was gonna get, just go away. And that is challenging if you talk about how do you keep moving when how do you keep moving when you have such frictions coming on the way. So, but luckily our production network is on sovereign mainnet and it's still working without any hurdles. A couple of more things that came in our way are like some decisions that we're looking at. For example, would it be more feasible to go ledgerless? Because, speeds of credential issuance is a question here. And then dependency on a particular ledger is a question here. And then some other things like framework use. What kind of frameworks should we use? What kind of data methods are going to be would be more acceptable and interoperable in the future? What kind of communication protocols like DITCOM or OIDC would be much more acceptable in the future? All these questions are still something that we're trying to figure out. And I believe based on the research that we are researching, the time we're putting into it, I hope we will be able to make a decision soon on these things. But that being said, I think majority of these decisions are very difficult to make because it's very difficult to predict where the industry is heading, which kind of adaptability is coming to, which kind of ledgers or ledgerless solutions or protocols, basically. Anders, can you move to the next slide, please? Hello, Anders?
Yes, we can see the next slide.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So some more things that came to our view was that how people and how our customers were actually perceiving these things. Like Anders mentioned, there has been this extremes of data policies that either people want to share everything or they don't want to share anything, which brings us to some really crucial questions that who stores what and how. And we
I think we lost you, Omar. Andres, can you hear us?
I'm in the developing country and he's in Finland. This is strange.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right, sorry about that. So what I was saying was that one thing that came to our attention was that a lot of people that we're working with, a lot of customers that we're working with had this both these extreme ends. Either they want to share everything or they don't want to share anything, which means we had to build things from scratch to entertain such customers. And the questions were like, how do we bring pluggable storage to a system like ZADA, where we technically don't become a data holder at all, in which we don't store anything, and they store everything in their storage, and we are just more like a data processor and are able to just process rather than storing. And on the same lines, the questions were that how the wallet interoperability would affect the more we scale up, how people would want to use different kind of wallets, and these wallets should be able to support the credentials. Although we are following certain standards for our credentials, W3C bipolar credentials, but still, interoperability among wallets has to be based on certain partnerships.
Sorry to interrupt. We have just 10 seconds left in our session. So.
Okay, so I'll just wrap it up then. Okay, so, but all in all, the scope has been that we need to figure out that how do you scale something like this to a point where it can handle millions of credentials, and we are still in that journey.
Omar, Andreas, thank you so much for your presentation. Unfortunately, we don't have time to take any questions from the audience, but thank you so much, and everyone, a round of applause for Omar and Andreas.